मानसं मे सुजाता गम्भीरत्वात् क्वचन समये गूढनिक्षिप्त गम्भीरत्वात् क्वचन समये गूढनिक्षिप्त
उपमा कालिदासस्य भारवेर अर्थगौरवं दण्डिनः पदलालित्यं माघे सन्ति त्रयो गुणाः. So we speak of poets in the Sanskrit literature who have added beauty to this language as well as the literature. One such poet of immense significance and respect is Bhavabhuti. Bhavabhuti chose Ramayana largely as the theme of his works. Valmiki has given us Ramayana in its entirety, totality. Balakandam, Ayodhya Kandam, Aranya Kandam, Kishkinda Kandam, Sundara Kandam, Yuddha Kandam, Uttara Kandam. Right from what happened before the birth of Rama to his birth, to his life's journey with Sita and his brothers, and the birth of his sons Lava and Kusha, till their Pattabhishekam, the entire package from Balakandam to Uttarakandam has been given to us as Valmiki's Ramayana. Bhavabhuti split this into two. Bala, Ayodhya, Aranya, Kishkinda, Sundara, Yuddha. These kandams together, he gave us a work called as Mahavira Charitram. The Uttarakanda portion, he wrote a work called as Uttara Ramacharitram. Of course, the first work, which is Mahavira Charitram, is good, popular, but Uttara Ramacharitram is extremely popular. In Uttara Ramacharitram, there is a scene where Rama and Sita were talking to each other, and they beautifully, as she laid herself on the very chest of Rama, that night passed by. The verse goes like this. Kimapi kimapi mandam mandamasatti yogad avirilatida kapolam jalpatora kramena ashithila parirambhavya pitrikaika doshna avidida gadayama ratri revam yaram seed. So, ratri revam. Instead, he said Iva. The night also passed by, but it is believed Kalidasa and Bhavabhuti lived in different times. But probably people who wrote anecdotes wanted to bring the best of the poets together. So Kalidasa recommended, instead of saying Iva, you say Evam. When they rested with each other, it was only the night that passed by. The love between Rama and Sita continued forever, so that Evam will add a lot of value. So Bhavabhuti, who developed Uttara Ramacharitram on the lines of Valmiki's Uttarakandam, adds a lot of value to it. There is one place where Rama and Sita were called by the artist, because Rama had ordered that portraits depicting incidents, important incidents from his life, have to be put forth in a gallery. So Rama holds the hand of Sita and they go and see one painting after the other. So she says, Rama, you're so young. Is this how you came to Mithila? Oh, this describes your boyhood. Here, both of us are married. We are going around the Agni. We are doing the Pradakshina around the Agni. So they start appreciating every portrait depicting the important incidents in their life, one after the other. There is one scene where both of them were stuck and amazed. That is, during their exile in the forest, they were humbled by the hospitality of the rishis and the rishi patnis. Sita was pregnant then. That is when she tells Rama, looking at this portrait, I have a feeling, Rama, that my children who will be born should also grow up in this kind of an atmosphere which will humble a person, which will give him a lot of modesty and humility. Rama promises. So Bhavabhuti develops that banishing of Sita to the forest in a very, very, very step-by-step fashion. That day, while she was showcasing every portrait, alongside Lakshmana was also there. So Lakshmana said, can I take turns and can I explain each of these portraits? That is when one portrait comes where Sita is talking to Mandavi, Shrutakirti and Urmila. Mandavi was the wife of Bharata, Shrutakirti was the wife of Shatrughna, Urmila was the wife of Lakshmana. While Lakshmana introduces, he says, see, Mandavi is here, there is Shrutakirti, and he doesn't mention Urmila's name out of shyness. That is when Sita comes up and says, Lakshmana, can you tell me who that is? I'm not aware of her. She wanted the name Urmila to come out of Lakshmana's mouth. So this kind of a casual conversation has been put forth so beautifully by Bhavabhuti in Uttara Ramacharitram. We need to read it to relish it. Here, now that we have understood Bhavabhuti, we have understood Dandi, we have understood Kalidasa, there is one anecdote that goes around involving the three of them. They belong to three different periods, but there is an anecdote. It seems people were very appreciative of Kalidasa's poetry. Every news article would carry only an opinion about Kalidasa's works. They will appreciate Kalidasa's usage of words, similes and so on. There were talented poets, probably as good as Kalidasa. One such was Dandi. Dandi felt very hurt. He thought, Kalidasa, it's high time that we get a decision as to who amongst us is the better of the poets. I believe I am, you believe you're. But let's go to a decision maker. That's when they thought the most experienced of all of them was Bhavabhuti. So both Kalidasa and Dandi, they marched to the house of Bhavabhuti. Bhavabhuti had gone on a tour to the neighboring village. His 5-year-old granddaughter was at home. So the moment Dandi and Kalidasa knocked at the door of Bhavabhuti, the little girl opened the door and said, I am very happy to see the both of you elderly people here. Sirs, how can I help you? They said, is your grandfather here? No, my grandfather has gone to the neighboring village. Sir, but please do not leave. Sit on the platform, because in those days, traditional houses had raised platforms on either side of the house. They were flanking the door. So on one side sat Kalidasa, on the other side sat Dandi. So she wanted to be hospitable. Look at the value that the civilization says. A 5-year-old girl, she asks Kalidasa, Sir, what can I bring for you? Kalidasa says, Patrani Swarna Varnani Karanantaya Chalochane. Because it was post lunchtime, they wanted to have some betel leaf. So he says, Patrani, leaves. Swarna Varnani. Probably they were golden colored betel leaves in those days. Karanantaya Chalochane, one who has got eyes that extend till the ears, he said. She understood that she had to get betel leaves for Kalidasa. Then she turned towards Dandi. Sir, what can I get for you? He said, of course, betel leaf cannot be consumed just like that. I need the paste to go along with that. I need the churnam. So, Turnam Aniyatam Churnam Purna Chandra Nibhanani. Purna Chandra Nibhanani. Oh, this little girl, the cute one whose face looks like the full moon. Please bring me that churnam immediately. So he asked for betel leaf, he asked for churnam. She holds the betel leaf in one palm, the churnam in the other, and she comes running outside. Meanwhile, Bhavabhuti, who had gone elsewhere, was returning, and he was surprised to find the door of his house open and the little granddaughter getting betel leaf and the churnam for somebody. He didn't notice Kalidasa and Dandi sitting on either sides. So he asked, whom are you getting this for, my dear granddaughter? The granddaughter said, Kavayaha Kalidasaya Dandinaha Panditasya cha. I am getting this, the betel leaf that I am holding in my hand is for the best of the poets called Kalidasa, and the churnam that I am holding, the paste that I am holding is for the best of the grammarians called Dandi. So they had wanted to decide who amongst them is the better poet, and the decision was to be made by Bhavabhuti, but instead the 5-year-old granddaughter has made. How did she recognize, realize and conclude that Kalidasa is a better poet while Dandi is a grammarian? Because she knows that general poetry or poets give more importance to the emotion and the description rather than the sentence formation. So in sentence, probably in English, we come across subject plus predicate, subject plus verb plus object. Object is indirect object, direct object. Verb should be past participle, present continuous, future continuous, how it is. It is all decided based on the context. This is how grammatically correct sentences are framed. But poets are more concerned about the emotion. What did Kalidasa say? He said, Patrani Swarna Varnani, golden colored betel leaves. Who is this girl? Karanantaya cha lochane, the one who has got eyes that extend till the ears. How did he say? Leaves, many in number, golden colored leaves, the one whose eyes extend till the ears. This is how he said. If you look at Dandi, he said, the paste that I need to use, bring, O the one with a full moon like face. Both of them gave descriptions like poets, but Kalidasa never used the verb there. He said, the one whose eyes extend till the ears, which is descriptive of the girl. Golden colored beetle leaves. See, generally when we ask in our houses, Ma, we look at our mothers and say mom, mother, amma, amme, ma, whatever, water. We don't say mother, the one who has given birth to me. Please carry one of the 5 elements called water in a container and bring that to me. No, we don't use such sentences. We say, we are all poets. We say water. So when we say water, we use only the object. We are not using the verb. So this girl was of the opinion that if you are a poet, you generally give importance to emotion and not the sentence formation. So without a verb, you are a poet. So Kalidasa said, golden colored beetle leaves, the one whose eyes extend till the ears, didn't use the verb bring. Whereas Dandi said, bring, aniyatam churnam, bring. So she thought without verb he is a poet, with verb he is a grammarian. So she said, Kavayaha Kalidasaya Dandinaha Panditasya cha. Here is Kalidasa the better among the poets, and here is Dandi the best in the grammarians. So she was able to. So this anecdote, whether it happened in reality or not, because there were different time periods, how to pull all 3 of them into one time period is a big question. But it reminds us that even at a young age, we will be able to instill the concept of literature, sentence formation, emotions, similes, metaphors, pun, and so on in the minds of children. He gave another work, Bhavabhuti, besides Mahavira Charitram and Uttararama Charitram. He gave us a work called Malati Madhavam. It talks about the love between Malati and Madhava. So that's about Bhavabhuti. Now let's move to another great poet. His name was Sri Harsha. Sri Harsha is known for a very, very stupendous intellect and toughest formation of sentences. Of course, it's believed that he also gave a philosophical treatise called as Khandana Khanda Khadyam. That's not the topic for us now, since we're just discussing literature and not getting into philosophy. But that work is hailed as one of the toughest philosophical works, Khandana Khanda Khadyam. Now this Sri Harsha is believed to have belonged to the northernmost part of India. Some say he could have belonged to Kashmir. But to seek some job as a poet, he came to Varanasi, which is in Uttar Pradesh, Benares. And it is believed that he sat on the shores of Ganga. He didn't know the local language. Probably it was Vrajbhasha or Khadi Boli Hindi. We don't know. He knew only Sanskritam. So one day, as he was searching for his job, he couldn't get one, so he was meditating on Mother Ganga on her banks. That is when he saw 2 women who had arrived at that scene with their pots to fetch water. There was a small debate between the 2, and that became a big fight. Many people were not around them at the start, so they didn't know who started the fight, who spoke what. But a huge crowd gathered when it became a huge battle. That is when somebody wanted to understand who started it first. Is there a third person here who has seen this argument to understand what had happened? That is when Harsha came and said, see sir, I speak a different language called Sanskrit. I don't speak your language, the language you speak here. But I have the ability to memorize anything that I hear. And I can present it the same way. So I will tell you what happened. And he mentioned the steps taken by the woman, coming there, who started, what spoke, who spoke, when they spoke. And the crowd was absolutely surprised, and they went and reported to the king. And the king recruited Harsha as one of the Asthana Kavis, the court poets. And Harsha gave us a beautiful work, poetry, a poem called as Naishadham. This Naishadham is a poem that talks about the life of a king called Nala and the incidents that revolve around him and his wife Damayanti. So Nala Damayanti's entire biography has been put together, compiled together in such beautiful poetic form by Sri Harsha, and that work is called Naishadham. Here is one example. हंसोऽप्यसौ हंसगते सुदत्या पुरः पुरश्चारुचलं बभासे वैलक्ष्यहेतोर्गतिमेतदीयाम् अग्रेऽनुकृत्योपहसन्न उच्चैः. He says that as Damayanti and her maidens walked, the female swans would wait to mimic their gait, and as they would mimic their gait, the Damayanti, who was a princess then, and her maidens would drive away the swans out of shyness. So here, Damayanti, who was a princess then, with her maidens, found it a bit embarrassing and a lot shy when the swans were mimicking, the hamsas were mimicking their gait. So they would drive them away. And as they would drive them away, the maidens used to start laughing at the highest pitch. So he says, Krityo Hasan iva uchchaihi. So each of these verses is filled, smeared with the best of similes from Harsha's writing room. There is one anecdote that goes around Harsha. Harsha's usage of words was so tough that the king thought it was more relishable to the intellectuals and not reaching the commoners. So he said, Harsha, you need to take some time off. I give you some time off. Meditate for some time and then use words which are found palatable, acceptable, enjoyable to even commoners. Take your time off. So it was over 3-4 days. Harsha was taking his time off. The king couldn't live without the intellectual called Sri Harsha. So he asked his soldiers to go in search of Harsha and bring him. So they found Harsha munching something. And they asked, Harsha, the king is calling you. What are you munching? He said, Asesha Sesha Musham Shishe Mishe. So I am consuming the leftover moong dal made vada so happily. So even then he could have just said, I'm eating. Asesha Sesha Musham Shishe Mishe. So the words that he used was very typical of him to bring the toughest of the words and frame them into sentences. But Harsha is revered as one of the greatest poets that we have seen in the Sanskrit literature. Now we are going to go to the 13th century CE to the south of India. In Kanchipuram, in a small hamlet which used to be filled with the holy grass called Darbha, was born a great poet, dramatist, philosopher, dietitian, a polyglot, all-in-one, a polymath to put it in or to sum it up. His name was Vedanta Deshika. Vedanta Deshika was born in 1268 and lived for over 101 years till about 1369 AD. He lived during the times of the Islamic invasion, so there were some problems that he had to face for survival. And during his lifetime, he composed over 120 works, and they are distributed into 3 languages. One is, of course, Sanskrit. Second is Tamil, Dravidian language. And third is an admixture of both, Sanskritam and Tamil, which is called Manipravalam. He has given one work in Prakrit as well. So now that we are dealing with Sanskrit literature, we will concentrate on 4 of his great works. One is, of course, Hamsa Sandesham. Vamshe jata savituranaghe manayan manushatvam deva shriman janakatanayan veshane jagarukaha pratyayate pavanatanaye nishchitarthasakami kalpakaram kathamapi nishama vibhatam vishe. So this is a beautiful verse, the invocatory verse of a work called as Hamsa Sandesham. Like Kalidasa's Meghadutam, in Kalidasa's Meghadutam, his poem of a love tone, a person who is being affected by love, knows that his wife has gone to her place and he's missing her. So he sees the dark clouds that go atop the sky in the rainy season and says, oh, you dark clouds, you're going towards the place where my lover is. So convey these feelings that I have to her. So he sends the clouds as messengers. Megha Dutam. Duta means messenger. Megha is clouds. So something very similar, on the similar lines, Vedanta Deshika has composed a work of 110 verses called as Hamsa Sandesham. So this is themed after Ramayana. In Ramayana, we would have known that Hanuman is sent as a messenger of Rama to Sita. So Hanuman crosses the ocean, goes into the island country of Lanka and wants to spot her. That is when finally he spots Sita, conveys his message that Rama is there to protect her. She gives the Chudamani, accepts the ring, and he flies back. So he flies all the way back where Sugriva, Rama, Lakshmana were stationed. They were stationed in Bellary, which is the current day Karnataka. So that night Rama was assured, that evening Rama was assured by Hanuman that Sita is there and we have to go there. So now that Rama was assured of Sita's survival, now he wanted to convey the love he had for Sita. He couldn't send Hanuman again, probably Hanuman will be tired. So he spotted, now is where Vedanta Deshika's imagination comes. He spotted a swan, a Hamsa, and said, Hamsa, you are very similar to Sita because she also has a gait like that of yours. She too is as pristine as yours. It is your motif that she bears in her sari border. So you go and convey my love to her. Now the Hamsa, the bird, would ask, where should I go? Where is Lanka? How will my journey be? So Vedanta Deshika through Rama describes to the Hamsa how the journey, the sojourn to Lanka for the Hamsa is going to be. So this compilation of verses is called as Hamsa Sandesham. This is one work. There is another work called Yadavabhyudayam. So Yadavabhyudayam talks about the activities and the happy days of growing together with Krishna, who was a Yadava. So right from Krishna's birth till the days where he was happy after the Mahabharata war with his wives, that entire journey has been traced by Vedanta Deshika in a set of over 2,500 verses housed in 24 chapters. So this is called Yadavabhyudayam, and something very unique about this work, like how I said about Kalidasa, his work has been commented upon by a great commentator called Mallinatha. Vedanta Deshika's work, poetry, poem, Kavya Ratnam, the gem amongst poems called Yadavabhyudayam, has been commented by yet another great grammarian and a poet called Appaya Dikshita, who lived 200-250 years after Vedanta Deshika. So Vedanta Deshika's work is beautiful, and the commentary to that work by Appaya Dikshita is all the more beautiful. So that is Yadavabhyudayam. Another work of Vedanta Deshika, which is of immense importance, is a work that he wrote in the shortest span of time. It is said that he was called for a debate or a competition by another poet while he lived in a small temple town called Srirangam in the south of India in Tamil Nadu. So while the poet and Vedanta Deshika were on a competition, it was to choose a topic and compose the maximum number of verses. And the time given was 3 hours early in the morning, between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. So both of these poets sat, the audience sat, they didn't sleep. Look at what kind of an India we had. In the mid of the night, people are seeing a competition amongst poets. So they sat, and this opposing poet wrote about 300 verses on the lotus-like feet of Lord Vishnu, which was called Pada Kamala Shatakam. Since there were over 300 verses, this was more than a Shatakam. So that is when this poet, who was very proud of those 300 verses, asked Vedanta Deshika, what have you written in these 3 hours? Vedanta Deshika said, you've chosen the feet. You're a great poet. I am not even qualified enough to speak about the feet of the Lord. So I have chosen his footwear, his padukas. The poet was surprised. He asked Vedanta Deshika, you've chosen what? The padukas, the slippers, the footwear of the Lord. Vedanta Deshika said, yes, that's what I'm ordained for. That's what I'm meant to do. And how many verses have you written? He asked. Vedanta Deshika said, I have just written 1008 verses. So 1008 verses in chaste Sanskrit composed on the padukas of the Lord in 3 hours is a marvel in Sanskrit literature. And that work is called Paduka Sahasram. Sahasra in Sanskrit means 1000. Sahasram means that work which has 1000 verses. So Paduka Sahasram means the 1000 verses composed on the Padukas. So I have spoken about 2 works, Yadavabhyudayam and Paduka Sahasram. The description is beautiful, but I'm going to take you across to a new form of poetry called Chitra Kavyam. Chitra Kavyam. Kavyam means poetry. Chitra Kavyam is poetry through images, imagery. Vedanta Deshika was not the founder of this. Bharavi has used, Magha has used, in Hara Vijaya there is a kavyam called Hara Vijaya where they have used. So many poets who lived in the last 2000 years have been fans of Chitra Kavya and have used, but it is used minimally because here it is more about depiction through images rather than the metaphors and the similes. So when there are no metaphors or no similes or less importance given to metaphors and similes, that is when the images take prominence. Imagery is beautiful, but as poetry it is not that appreciated. So poets would always keep their skills in Chitrakavyam low. So Vedanta Deshika has also attributed only one sarga, if I'm right, the 30th chapter of Paduka Sahasram and probably the 6th or the 7th canto of Yadavabhyudayam to Chitrakavyam. So I will just take you through some of the images. The first is a format called Ardha Brahmarakam. So the image that you see right in front of your eyes is like this. Let's take the rows. Rows or horizontal. Rows are horizontal. Columns are vertical. You can probably relate this to the latitudes and the longitudes that we have created for our understanding of Mother Earth. So let's take rows and let's put the letters into each box. The verse goes like this. Nadisara sametatra deepta bhasa naravrita sabhanasau mabhirame rasa saumyasu manasa. This is the verse. There are 4 sections in this verse. Each part of this verse has 8 letters. So there are 4 parts. Each part has 8 letters. 8 into 4 is 32. So each row has 8 boxes. There are 4 such rows. 8 fours are 32. So I put them into the respective boxes. Let's take the first row. Na, di, sa, ra, sa, me, ta, tra. 8 letters. Second row. Di, ta, bha, sa, na, ra, vr, ta. Third row. Sa, bha, na, sau, ma, bhi, ra, me. Fourth row. Ra, sa, sau, mya, su, ma, na, sa. We have 4 rows. Now, let us read the columns. What does the first column read from top to bottom? Na, di, sa, ra. Let's continue the journey in the reverse direction for the last column, which is sa, me, ta, tra. So, the first column I've read from top to bottom, na, di, sa, ra. The last column I've read from bottom to top, sa, me, ta, tra. Let's continue this journey to the second column, deep, ta, bha, sa. Let's read the penultimate column, na, ra, vr, ta. Let's go to the third column, sa, bha, na, sau. Let's go to the 6th column, ma, bhi, ra, me. Let's go to the 4th column, ra, sa, sau, mya. Let's go to the 5th column, su, ma, na, sa. So the last 4 columns you read from bottom to top, first 4 columns you read top to bottom. What you get is the verse again. So if you put that horizontally or vertically, the same verse comes. So whichever way you work, this has been protected from all sides. So it is called Ardha Brahmarakam. Now we'll have to go in a certain fashion. Second, I will take you to a verse from Paduka Sahasram. And this is indicative of a 16-petaled lotus. A petal is a dalam. In Sanskrit, a petal is a dala. Padmam or Padma is a lotus. Shodasha, Shat is 6, Dasha is 10, Shodasha is 16, Shodasha Dala is a 16-petaled, Padma is lotus. Shodasha Dala Padma is the name of this format. So here we are going to take the central portion and write the letter Pa. We are going to create 16 petals around that central portion and we are going to assign one letter to every petal. Let's take the central Pa as the letter that will precede every letter of the petal. So from the center I state Pa. What is the first petal? Pa. So the word is Pa Pa. Let's take Pa again and go to the second petal. What is the word? Ku. pa pa, ku pa, ra pa, li pa, tri pa, di pa, da pa, kri pa, ta, kripa, rupa, japa, lapa, swapa, mapa, nripa, dipa. So if you notice, every second letter is a pa. So in an 32 lettered verse in Sanskrit meter, if every second letter is pa, then if I take the pas out, I will have 16 pas. So the letter pa is repeated 16 times. So instead of repeating it, that pa which is repeated 16 times is assigned the central circle. Whereas the remaining 16 letters are different. So they are assigned every letter, every petal. So petal to the central portion, petal to the central portion, you get the entire verse. Now you may be wondering, what does this mean? There is absolutely meaning to it connected to Paduka, which is the theme. But what is also beautiful is this verse, beside being meaningful, is also being very, very image driven. Now, let's go to another verse, which is a Shadara Chakram. Chakra is a circle. Ara is a spoke. So, Shadara is a circle, a wheel with 6 spokes. So, the verse has certain number of letters, and this verse has been split into 4 parts. The first part, Saddaivankura Yata Vaibhavalata Shobhyuchana Nagame, is the first part. Now I assign every letter to one place and complete that part of these letters in one full spoke. When I say full spoke, there are spokes on either sides of the central axle. I complete that in a straight spoke. So I start from the first. So Saddaivankura Yata Vaibhava Lata Shobhyuchana Nagame. If you see the absolutely vertical, central spoke or spokes on either side of the circle, these letters are filled. Now let's go to the next spoke. Bhavyang karma sadarchito vyada vana diyada sannathi krite. So this is the second spoke. Now we go to the third. The fourth part, we have only 3 spokes, but we have 4 parts to the verses. So the letters in the fourth part need to be filled in the circumference of this wheel, the periphery of this wheel. So that's how we have filled. Now if you look at the third concentric circle from the periphery, the letter is a V. Corresponding letter in the same third concentric circle in the next spoke is Inka. Next is Ta. Next is Na. Next is Thi. Next is Yo. Correct? Now if you look at the 6th concentric circle from the periphery, the letter is Ya. Next spoke it is Da. Next it is Va. Next it is Bu. Next it is Da. Next it is Yaha. So if you put these letters together, it goes like this. Venkatanathiya Yadavabhyudayaha. So Venkatanatha is the original name with which Vedanta Deshika was named. What has he written? He has written this poem called Yadavabhyudayaha. Who has written? Venkatanatha has written. Venkatanathiya Yadavabhyudayaha. This Yadavabhyudaya which has been composed by Venkatanatha. So this is called as a signature. So he has put a signature and he has put that into an image as well. So this is imagery. So there are many such images. You can draw a beautiful mridanga, an instrument using letters. You can draw 2 squares, 2 squares within 2 concentric circles and fill in them with letters. You can read letters to such an extent that the movement of the letters in consecutive verses can also determine the movement of a knight on an empty chessboard, which solves a knight's tour problem. So all this in images. So that's the greatness of poets such as this, and Vedanta Deshika has done a marvelous job here. Of course, his other forms of poetry is equally appreciated, but I've just taken this as a sample because we have never discussed Chitrakavyam till now. The next poet who's going to be our topic of study is the 17th century CE poet who lived in the 17th century CE. His name was Venkatadhwari Kavi. Again, he lived in the south of India. So he has written a work. I will read 2 consecutive verses of this work. Let's see what is special about this work. The first verse goes like this. Vandeham devam tam shritam rantaram kalam bhasayaha Rama Ramadhi apyagaha Leelam Ara Ayodhyevase. So it talks about paying obeisances or pranamams to Rama, who lived in this beautiful celebrated city of Ayodhya, Ayodhyevase, and the one who lifted the bow of Shiva and married Sita. So this is the essence of this work, of this verse. Let's go to the consecutive verse. Sevadhyeyo Rama Lali Yes Gopyaradhi Mara Mora Yasyabhalankaram Taram Tam Shritam Vandeham Devam. I bow to Lord Krishna. We were bowing to Lord Rama before. I offer my obeisances to Krishna, who played with Rukmini, who is Krishna's wife, and the other consorts, and who is also worshipped by the Gopika Stris, where he grew up. So this verse describes about Krishna, the previous verse about Rama. You know what's special about these verses? The second verse is an absolute mirror image of the first verse. If you read the first verse, Vandeham Devam Tam Shri Tam Rantaram Kalam Basaya Rama Ramadhi Apyaga Leelam Ara Ayodhye Vase. Let's reverse it. So what's the last letter? Vase, say. What is the penultimate letter? Ve, va. So seva. So vase becomes seva. Ayodhye becomes dhye, yo, R remains, and that's added to the previous letter Ra. So it becomes Seva Dhyeyo Rama Lali. So if you look at this verse, it is a mirror image of the first verse. Is that special? No. It has a meaning. So one verse conveys about Rama, the other about Krishna. So that which conveys about Rama is Raghavam. The other one about Krishna is Yadavam. So this work is called Yadava Raghaviyam. It talks about Yadava and Rama. So Venkatadhwari Kavi was able to create palindromes of 2 different personalities in a language with not identical letters but with absolutely different letters, and brought out beautiful work called Yadava Raghaviyam. He also gave us 2 other works which are of immense importance to Sanskrit literature. One, we have seen Paduka Sahasram of Vedanta Deshika, 1,000 plus verses was written on the Padukas, the footwear of the Lord. Here we have over 1,000 verses written on the beauty and the grace of Goddess Mahalakshmi. It's called Lakshmi Sahasram. In that there is one verse which goes like this. Hantarasthamasam dishantu kamale danta mudam tavakaha Yeshu Dama Japasa Driksha Rasana Chayoparaktam Sushu Uchchaif Paktrimadadima Brahmavashad Utpatti Sukeli Shuka Pratyavartana Kheda Nissahataya Panir Visesharunaha. What he says is, it seems once Mahalakshmi noticed her arms were developing rashes, they were all red. She wondered how this happened. For this, the poet gives a beautiful justification. He says that she used to hold a beautiful parrot in her palm, and she used to hold it so beautifully, and the parrot used to be such a pet of Mahalakshmi, and Mahalakshmi had coral like lips and pearl like teeth. They were white, pristine white, and as she used to smile looking at the parrot, the red hue from her lips would be reflected on the pearl-like white teeth on both rows. Because they were reflected, at one point in time, her teeth used to take the reflection of the redness and used to look like pomegranate seeds. The fruit, the pomegranate, they used to look like the pomegranate seeds. The bird, it seems, used to think, as Mahalakshmi used to smile, that the teeth, the bird mistook the teeth for pomegranate seeds and used to keep flying towards the teeth to prick. And Mahalakshmi had this arduous job of stopping her pet, saying that this is my teeth, this is not pomegranate. And every time she would go back and forth, the bangles that she was wearing used to cause abrasion on her skin surface, and hence it turned red. So why it turned red? There is a story given. So this is how poets have operated in India, and have, we can call it heights of imagination. At times we may find less logic, but what's more beautiful is the way they have deployed their mind in understanding this literature. Now, the last poet who is going to be our topic of appreciation and understanding is Nilakantha Dikshita, who lived in the 17th century CE in the south of India. We have dealt with a lot of poets from the middle and the central India and the north India. We are now seeing a lot of poets in the south of India as well. Nilakantha Dikshita, who lived in the very celebrated, a very old city called Madurai in the south of India. So he served as the court poet and minister to a great king called Thirumalai Nayaka. So he has composed many works. There is one work which is a Champu Kavya. Champu, I said at the commencement of our course, the Champu is a judicious mix of poetry and prose. So we have Bhojaraja's Ramayana Champu, we have Ananta Kavi's Bharata Champu, we have Venkatadhwari Kavi, whom we recently discussed. His Champu is called Vishwa Gunadarsha Champu, a beautiful Champu. I don't have time to discuss that. If you get a copy of it, please read it and relish it. It's called Vishwa Gunadarsha Champu. And one such Champu, which is also famous like the Ramayana Champu, Bharata Champu, Vishwagunadarsha Champu, is the Nilakantha Vijaya Champu that talks about the greatness of Lord Shiva in having consumed the poison that arose from the churning of the oceans. So there is a verse where he celebrates Drishtva kaustubham apsaro ganamapi prakranta vadamitho girvana kativana santi bhuvane bharadivah kevalam nishkrante garale drite suragane nischeshtite vishtape ma bhaishteti giravirasa dhuriyo devastamevastu maha. I shall worship Lord Shiva, the one who magnanimously, who mercifully wanted to save the world and its beings and its creatures. And while others were fighting to get the Kalpaka Vriksha, the Kamadhenu, the Chintamani, the Uchcheshravas, they were fighting for riches while the ocean was being churned. There is only one person who came forward and consumed the poison as if poison was his share. I pay my obeisances to Lord Shiva, says Nilakantha Dikshita. So this is a beautiful work called Nilakantha Vijaya Champu. He has written also works called Kali Vidambanam and Sabharanjana Shatakam. These are all works that are sarcastic in nature. I'll give you one example. In Indian philosophical system, logical reasoning, we have believed that only through questioning and debates and discussions we will be able to understand better and come to a conclusion. So when there is a debate, when there is a discussion, you let the other person speak, listen to him or her completely and give your point of view. Now when there is a contradiction is where you start countering each other. But here he gives a sarcastic way of how a discussion should be. So he says, Na bhetavyam, na bodhavyam, na shravyam vadino vachaha, jhatiti prati vaktavyam sabhasu vijigishu bihi. So he says, how should a good debate be? You don't have to listen to the other person. You don't have to give the other person the chance to speak. You don't have to make sense out of anything that he or she says, even if there is sense in it, because you are ready to retort immediately even without listening. So a good debate is a one where the person doesn't listen to the other person, whether the person doesn't give any chance to the other person to speak, and he keeps talking himself. So if we listen to most of the TV debates that we see in most news channels these days within India and probably even outside India, we find there are 10 people coming as panelists and shouting together. And we wonder if this is a debate or a discussion. Probably even a fish market could be more organized than this. So he takes us in the 17th century, he mocks at such debates. And there is another verse which is often cited. Ayuv prashne dirghamayur vajyam mauhurtikair janaihi jivanto bahumanyante mritaha pakshyanti kampunaha. So if you're an astrologer, if you've chosen to be an astrologer who looks at people's horoscopes and kind of predicts how their immediate future is going to be, he has an advice. Nilakantha Dikshita has an advice. He tells astrologers, now if people ask you how long they will live, always predict a long life for that person. Because Those who live a long life, after you've said that, even if it isn't found in the horoscope, you're going to say you're going to live a long life. And if that person manages to live long life, he's going to talk laurels about you. He's going to tell the other person, see, I took my horoscope to that astrologer. He saw and he said, I'm going to live for many years. See, I'm living. He's such a good astrologer. So you'll get a good name and fame. And if that person dies, anyways, that person after death is not going to come and question you. So even if the person is dead, he's not going to come and question you. And if he's going to live long, he's going to make your name and fame spread. So make sure that if you're an astrologer and a person comes to you asking for predictions, make sure that you're going to say that the person is going to live for a very long time. So there is a Sabharanjana Shatakam where he adds a lot of humor to how behavior in sabhas or how behavior in most places are. So we come across such a plethora of poets who have adorned Sanskrit literature. If Sanskrit literature can be proud of itself, it's because of the contributions of people right from Bhasa to Vishnu Sharma, to Shudraka, to Kalidasa, to Bhartrhari, to Bharavi, to Vishakadatta, to Magha, to Mahindra Varma, to Dandi, to Banabhatta, to Bhavabhuti, Sriharsha, Vedanta Deshika, Venkatadhvari Kavi and Nilakantha Dikshita. So we have seen the best of the poets in Sanskrit language across time periods, BCE, CE, last millennium, this millennium, across the north, central and the southern part of India. So what we have spoken is just a speck of the huge universe of Sanskrit literature and poets and dramatists that we have seen. But we are very indebted to all our predecessors and acharyas who have preserved this. And it's in our hands to relish this literature by buying books, either the hard copy or the soft copy, reading through and appreciating the genius, the creativity and the presentation skills of all these poets and dramatists. Namaste.
गम्भीरत्वात् क्वचन समये गूढनिक्षिप्त नालिकेन स्फुरितरजसा वेधसो निर्मिमाणा नालिकेन स्फुरितरजसा वेधसो निर्मिमाणा